Right, okay. That's
Hey,
cool.
hey, Yehuda.
Hello.
So lovely to see you, and so lovely to have you here.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
we were just talking about about how we first met, and we were thinking that it was with Everybody Can Zotello.
I think so. I think that was back in 2015 at St James's Piccadilly, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like quite a way away, but it and I've always remembered that Rita Grugia, my manager, always spoke really fondly of you. So I had a kind of inkling of who you were, but so
My
but it
fame went before me.
it did. And that's always the best way, isn't it? Like,
I
you
hope
know,
so.
well, especially with someone who's got such a jovial personality as yours, it was really comforting to meet you and to
But
just.
it was a lovely performance to attend. I thought it was quite a thing to pull off an Otello in a church in Piccadilly. So
Everybody can.
you did, you did. It was. I can remember it all very clearly. So,
Oh, well, we're hoping that we can get our production of Norma up
oh,
and going soon. So
oh
that's going to
wow,
be our next project. So we've done an Otello, we've done a
wow,
Tosca, and now we're thinking of the next thing to do would be a Norma.
wow.
So let's see how we can make that happen, which would be amazing. But anyway, it's 9:01. Good
It's
morning.
very early for me.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nadine Benjamin. I'm an international soprano, opera soprano, and I'm also a certified high performance coach, and I'm also a neuro-linguistic programming mind coach, which is neuro, the brain, linguistic, how we speak to the brain, and programming, the different habits that we use to make our brain run on a consistent basis. And sometimes we want to make those more positive than sometimes the negative ones that they can be. This morning, I have the wonderful Yehuda Shapiro, who is an experienced London-based communication strategist and writer who gives direct, powerful expression to his clients' messages. He is also an active journalist and translator in the field of opera. With a background as an international marketing director and 20 years as an independent service provider, he offers clients a valuable and cost-effective package of skills. And unbeknownst to me, until yesterday, he has translated 6 operas for the Royal Opera House, but we will talk to him about that later. So I'm not going to avoid the fact that we are in the first day of a national lockdown. And, I feel really strongly about this. We created the Safe at Home sessions so everybody does have a community that they can go to every morning to check in with. And I just really want to drive home the point to remember that please, even though we're physically isolated, please do not be emotionally isolated. Pick up the phone to someone. Pick up the phone for someone, and pick up the phone for yourself if you can. Let's stay in connection. We're going to have loads of guests coming on here every day, Monday to Friday. And, ask them questions on the chat, identify with them if you want, be a part of this. We are all in this together. We may be in different parts of the journey, but we are here to support you. And if you feel that you could be of any support to anyone, even if you think, oh no, I won't do that because I'm a bit shy, just do it. Because I really do believe that this second safe at home or lockdown, as I know some people identify with, is going to be a little bit harder for some than we experienced the first time round. Yehuda, I don't know if you've got anything to say a little bit about that in terms of everybody.
Well, I just think it's incredible that we actually are able to do what we're doing now. I mean, if this lockdown had happened 20 years ago, it's just more than 20 years ago, it's unimaginable to think how isolated we would have been. And I think in normal life, maybe we tend to overuse the online stuff, and instead of face to face, but we have no option at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad old option considering what it would have been like otherwise.
Yes.
So we need to remember that this is actually a huge privilege to be able to do this now.
Thanks for reminding us of that, Yehuda. And I'll be maybe putting in a session on Sunday with some tools from my coaching box to support anybody who is having a little bit of extra trouble this time round, and just to give you some clear guidelines about how you can support yourself and maybe someone else. I'll do that on Sunday at some point. Anyway, let's get to our wonderful guest that we have this morning, and let's start asking him some questions. Morning. Morning, Linda. Lovely to have you here. Thank you for welcoming Yehuda and I. We appreciate it. And thank you for being a part of this community. You're always so bubbly and alive and engaged. Thank you, Linda. So you have a great love of opera, Yehuda. You know, how did this come about? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, when I was a kid, I did a lot of music at school. I learnt the piano and I played the violin.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I wasn't bad. I wish I had better teaching, actually, looking back on it now. But I'd never been a professional musician. I didn't have that in me.
Yeah.
I sort of did A-level music, and it was my thing.
Yeah.
And I was quite interested in opera. I just was feeling my way with it, really. I used to go along to the local library and take out recordings, and then when I was 17, and I was very lucky and went to see Aida at Covent Garden, and I think it was only the third opera I'd ever seen. I think I'd seen an amateur magic flute.
Yeah.
And I'd seen a rare Handel opera at Chichester Festival Theatre when I was 11 or 12. I wanted to go and see that. I'm amazed at myself, Yeah. And I went to see Aida at Covent Garden. It was just, and I grew up outside London, so London was a big deal anyway.
Yeah.
And I was sort of blown away by this. And it was Riccardo Muti conducting, and it was the second cast. The first cast was Caballé and Domingo, and the second cast still had Fiorenza Cosotto as Amneris. It just sort of blasted your ears off, really. So, I sort of fell in love with opera from there. And Aida is still one of my favourites. I think it's an opera that gets a bit of a bum deal from people. I think people sort of make excuses for it, which I don't understand, because I just think it's brilliant. I love it.
It's a phenomenal opera. I've sung that opera. I've sung Aida.
Yeah. In Berger, wasn't it?
Yeah, with Opera de Berger, and I'm telling you, it was such a wonderful experience, and I agree with you. It is a phenomenal piece of work.
Yeah, and I sort of think Verdi gets better and better as you get older, because I know when I was younger, I thought some bits of it were a bit rumty-tongue, and I never think that now. I just love it.
Yes. Well, everybody knows I'm a Verdi fan too.
And from then on in, I was just a hopeless case, really, and I used to go to the library again, get opera scores out, and listen to the recordings and watch out for the top C's, and I haven't really progressed from there, actually.
Oh, bless. Good morning, Bobby. Lovely to see you. Bobby's just saying, I believed you worked at Decca when I was with Ben P. I could be wrong.
Indeed.
Playing tracks of Black Sopranos. Oh, wow.
Always been a thing of mine. and I've seen Bobby many times at OHP, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Bobby, for chipping in with that. I really appreciate it. Morning, Marianne Charlton. She's saying, yay, Verdi, Aida is amazing. Yes, you're right, Marianne. You're in agreement. You're in a party of who loves Verdi, all about Verdi. So, unbeknownst, I was saying to everybody at the beginning, you have translated 6 operas for the Royal Opera House. I had no idea.
It's something I've been very privileged to do, and in fact, it's the Decca connection that Bobby mentioned. Is a former colleague of mine from Decca was running the surtitle department at Covent Garden. Mm. And when I was at Decca, which is a very long time ago now, I was working on all the languages side of the booklets and so on the translation. So I had a very, very good training in translation. I mean, I'd done languages at university, but Decca was really where I learned to translate properly. And so he pulled me in originally to do Fliegende Holländer, I think. But the one I really loved doing was Der Rosenkavalier. That was because it's such a brilliant libretto. It's not my favourite Strauss, but it's a brilliant libretto. It's just too long, but
Yes.
a fantastic thing to translate. I mean, it was an absolute treat to translate. So
yes, and that trio, between the Martin, it's just wonderful.
I always say Rosenkavalier, the best bits are worth waiting for.
Yeah.
There's a lot in between. But what I learned from doing the libretto was how interesting the text is in some of those more boring bits. I think Hofmannsthal's a brilliant writer. I think he's one of my favourites. So that was sort of that's my. I don't think it'll get more high pointy than that. I've done some other stuff since which I've enjoyed, and I was meant to be doing Electra this summer, but of course that was sadly cancelled. Also a brilliant libretto. Not many laughs, but.
So this is interesting then. So your kind of journey into writing is very interesting. Can you tell us a bit? I mean, you became a journalist and a communications consultant. How did that journey come about, and what has that meant for you?
Well, the journalism is actually a relatively recent foray, really, because I started doing that formally in about 2004, 2005, something like that. Because I'd been doing work, I do work in all kinds of different communications, but I'd been doing work in classical music, and I'd got to know the editor of Opera magazine. And I bought a biography of Shirley Verrett, another one of my fave singers, and I read the biography and I thought, I wonder whether they've had a review of it. So I wrote to John. I said, has anyone reviewed this biography for you? And he said no. And I said, can I do it? And so I have Shirley Verrett to thank for sitting here to you. So,
and I love that biography. It is
very good.
It's very good. I'm trying to see if I've got it here actually to show people. But it's such a wonderful. I know. I think I might have packed it away, but it was such a wonderful eye opener for me. You know.
I mean, I do like singer bios, so
yes.
I think that was the first series one I read. So, but I'd been working. I mean, I've been working in broadly marketing communications since the beginning of my first job, really.
Wow.
Which again, as I say, is longer ago than I'd prefer to think about.
Well, you don't have to explain that, but in terms of communications, could you explain to some of us what that actually is?
That's a very good question. Can I communicate it? I think it's essentially putting together a framework for. I mean, talking about doing it for clients, you put a framework within which they need to communicate. I mean, if you look at the world of politics, for instance, I've never worked in politics, and it wouldn't be my area at all. You just listen to them, and you can tell when a politician's on the radio staying on message, as people say, because he or she is towing the line in a certain way, and I think it's dangerous when it gets very formulaic, but it's a very good idea to have a basic set of messages and understanding of what you want to communicate before you go out and talk about it or write about it. And especially in this day and age, in the digital age, there's a lot of cutting and pasting goes on. And for instance, I will write an article on behalf of a client. I've done that recently for a tech client, actually. And you will then find a journalist has basically just cut and pasted chunks of your press release or whatever into an article, and that's how it works these days. So you have to make sure that. I mean, I'm a stickler for accuracy, and I don't believe in hyping. I don't find hype helpful. If people want hype, I'm not the person to come to, because I think I like to respect the audience's understanding and discernment. And I feel that, for instance, if I'm doing communications work in the field of classical music, which is where obviously we have our connection, I just don't think, I always say, shoot me if I ever say acclaimed by critics and public alike, which is just empty. And I think it's very important to say something that's about the truths of what you're talking about, because otherwise, if those truths aren't there, then it's not worth communicating about it.
I mean, I have to say that's what I love about you. One of the greatest things, I think, why I've been attracted to your personality is that every time I've seen you, you've got this warm, authentic personality. And because of that, I also know when you write something, I'm going to look for it because I know it's coming from a really good place. And I thank you for that, because, you know, a lot of us can be afraid of journalism or the critique or the feedback, or, you know, but I really do feel held. Even if you don't like something, yes. I know that you're saying it for a really good reason.
So I think, you know, the whole role of a critic is a very strange one. But I think there's no point in being destructively critical. I think if you are being critical, be constructively critical. I think if someone clearly isn't up to a singer, clearly isn't up to a role, you just sort of pass over it, really. But if you feel they could be better in a role, then it's worth saying so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But not to be hurtful, because there's absolutely no point in that. I just don't see the point in that. It doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah. Well, Marjorie is also saying good morning. I've just realised that my thing's come out, so I'm just going to put that back in. Otherwise, we will be cutting ourselves off. Marjorie is saying good morning, Nadine, and your guest Yehuda. How important early exposure to music and opera is. We must support youngsters to see concerts and opera. And Gronia Gillis is saying Viva Verdi. We have another lovely Verdi fan. And Francis Griffin, who is an orchestrator of smaller ensembles, he's like, I love every note of Rozalka, or Rosenk, as he says. No, Rosenkavalier. Sorry, Francis, I just realised that. I'm going through all the operas here. And then Denai Eleni is saying, morning, love Rosenkavalier and totally agree. The text is so detailed and interesting throughout, and the music is pretty gorgeous too. So everybody's in agreement with you there, Yehuda. So we're looking at this thing called reinventing yourself.
Yes.
What does that mean to you? And can you tell us a little bit more what that kind of consists of?
It's a phrase that's a bit overused, and I don't want to push out a philosophy. That's again, I don't think you should dictate things to people. But I think, especially in the digital environment, the digital environment transformed my view of things when I started working in it, which was in the late 90s, really. Is that you realise that a lot of it's about whatever you're putting in front of someone at the time. There's very little hinterland these days. You know, people will be dipping into us now, and they might not know anything about us. And you have to establish who you are and what you have to give very quickly. And that's part of the communications story, I think. But I think standing still is terribly dangerous. And I think I've always been a very curious person anyway. And I've always been interested in the next thing as well as what's behind me, even now after quite a long career. So I think of necessity one has to reinvent oneself. And you know, I was thinking about this when we had our little pre-chat yesterday. I mean, you as a singer constantly have to reinvent yourself every time you take on a role.
Yes.
That's what you can't be the same in everything.
No.
And I think at the same time, you are always Nadine Benjamin. You're never going to be anybody else apart from Nadine Benjamin. And we're all like that in our life, I think, because we've all got different roles in our lives. That's not a great insight. And you're constantly adjusting, and I think it's very important to adjust to the people you're talking to, and that's also part of communications, is knowing who your audience is. I mean, this is a bit of a pump today because you think I don't really know who my audience is, but I know what the environment we're all meeting in, and the sort of people that you will be drawn to you. But so the reinvention is that every time you go out there, you have to think, who am I talking to? How are they going to respond to me? You know, and in life, you have to think, what am I going to get out of it? Whether that's more of a spiritual satisfaction, or in work, whether you're going to get paid for it. It's really making the most of opportunities along the way. I don't think in an exploitative way, but I think we all sort of owe it to ourselves to try and make the best of things. I'm talking in a professional situation here. make the best of every professional situation. Otherwise, you might as well go and do something else.
Yeah, I mean, even like now we're talking about, that everybody's going into this safe at home time. How do you think reinventing yourself works in that kind of situation?
I think it sort of picks up on what I was saying earlier, is that the way that the online environment has anyway become a kind of substitute for real life.
Yes.
And I think you have to treat it as real life. The danger and the opportunity lies in the fact that it's more simplistic. I mean, it makes a huge difference to be able to see someone's face on a screen, but it's still not the same as meeting them in person. I met someone in person the other day by chance, who I'd only seen on screen before, and her vibe was completely different, and not completely different, was quite different in person. And I sort of took to her so much more when I saw her in person than I had when I'd seen her on a screen. And suddenly you realise we're not getting the full story, but we're getting about 2/3, 3/4 of the story, which is better than you get in a letter in the old days, or in a memo. I mean, do you remember paper memos? Do you remember that? Sorry, I've sort of lost myself there. But I think you've got to, at the same time, in the online environment, it's very important to sort of keep control of it, because it can ramble on, and you can get you can get incredibly sensitive. I mean, sometimes someone will put something up on Facebook and one gets absolutely furious, and you get something, and that is incredibly dangerous, because I have done it occasionally and deleted it afterwards. But you must, in this process of reinvention, you've got to give yourself time to think. It's very, very important, because by nature, and it's something I'm quite an impulsive person. I was quite an impulsive kid. And being impulsive, it's very authentic being impulsive, but it's also very dangerous. And it's very important in this process to give oneself time, just to, you don't have to reply straight away. That's one of the dangers of the online world. If you feel you have to, that's not true. Just give yourself even 20 seconds to think about it, and it's better. And control your messages.
I always say it's really, sometimes if you don't know something, sleep on it, and respond in the morning. And that's the other thing. Don't react, respond. When you respond, you're being responsible for your actions. When you react, that's too chaotic.
And equally, when you're putting something out there, we all use. I don't like the expression personal brand. I don't like that as an expression. But when you put something onto Facebook, or you put something onto Twitter, you have to think about it before you do it. I mean, again, one wants to be quick and one wants to be on the ball and all that kind of stuff. But it in a sense, you're taking quite a risk. We're all our own broadcasters now. And which is quite scary in a way. And there's a lot of very amateur broadcasting goes on. And I say, if we are talking about this reinvention thing, it's very important to, I say you can keep control of it to some degree, not to the degree of becoming unspontaneous or fake. I hate fakery in anything. But you want to. It's being yourself, but being presenting yourself in the best way to a greater or lesser degree.
And I really hear you around staying on message. I mean, I think staying on message, even as for yourself, is really good in your motivation of how you go forward. I mean, my thing has been everybody can. And, when I get a stuck moment in my own sense of my own adventure, I then say, oh my gosh, but where is your everybody can in this, Nadine? How can you do this better? How can you be you better? So your message also helps you to reflect back on yourself and whether you're in the right alignment.
And I also think and this is something I see particularly when I'm working with clients, is they want the reassurance of someone who knows who they are and what they're doing. Because clients just understandably want you to look after it for them. That they'll throw something at you, and that's changed. I think people, again, because of the way we live and work, people throw something at you and expect you to sort it. And I will go back with a few questions to make sure I'm on the right track. But basically, I go back with answers, not with problems. It's a very cool thing to say. And
it's not corny. Solution.
And something I learned, and this is something I learned about 15 years ago with a lovely client who was tricky as hell. Nothing was ever right. She, absolutely wonderful person, loved her. And I thought, well, what you do is you give something, as if we're talking writing, or messaging or whatever, I will have a go and give it to them and let them react to it, as opposed to talking about something. I think the worst thing you can do as a communications consultant is provide someone with a discussion paper. That's the classic thing for a PR agency to, we'll put together a discussion paper. So you throw lots of question marks everywhere. Clients don't want question marks. They want something they can say, like that, don't like that. Again, the digital environment, we've become very binary. Basically, we live in a tick box world now. And if you can tick more boxes than you don't tick for clients, you're doing well.
I love that. I love what you're saying about the solution based. I used to work for Deutsche Bank in the city, and we used to have these two gurus called Peter Luthi and Jan Pethick, and they were in our company at the time. They were the leaders of taking all the doors off, the great chief execs. And they would say, if you walk past this door, you have to walk with a solution and not a problem.
Right.
And you can tell me what the challenge is, but I want 10 solutions for that challenge.
Yes.
So I think it is really important to clients, not just in a corporate environment, but in singing as well, and in people who choose you to do roles in opera, about how can you find solutions for them in terms of how you're going to communicate a role.
And as I was saying to you yesterday, when I saw you do Amelia in Holland Park last year, it was last year, wasn't it? It seems
it was. Yeah, it feels such a long time ago.
You had provided the solutions for that role in a very intelligent and sensitive way.
Thank you.
And I admire that in an artist, is when the artist knows how to do it their way. That sounds a very corny thing to say, as opposed to just following the notes or cheating. Actually, I don't like it when singers cheat.
Well, we didn't. Well, I think I didn't have any choice at the time. I had 4 weeks to learn the role, so I just had to just do it. But it was, it was a very interesting to have all my mentors, just reflect to me in a mirror how I could do the role with my voice, and that we really need those as well. And it's another form of communication. So.
But just to go back to what I'm thinking of, the question thing. As a child, as a student, I was very questioning about everything, and I was very discursive about everything, because in a way that's the way you're often brought up to be like that. As when you're a student, you have to question. And you can throw ideas around, and you can, and people like ideas being thrown around, but there has to be some conclusion drawn from those ideas when they're being thrown around. And I remember, again, in some of my early jobs, I felt, well, I'm not really in a position to say yes or no yet. And along the way, I did some work for someone the other day, actually in the opera field, and I ran it past someone who doesn't know much about opera, but might be interested in going, which was kind of what it needed to be. And she said something incredible that it was incredibly obvious to her, but it wasn't obvious to me, because I knew too much about what I was talking about. It's never be frightened to ask someone, do you understand this? What do you think? It's market research, essentially. And I do find in the field of music, this is one of my hobby horses. I've been knocking around in music for a long time. People don't ask their audience what they think.
I hear you. I think it's really important.
Again, how much effort is it to put together a survey monkey questionnaire? And you just get little insights. It doesn't have to be rigorous, but gosh,
Well, Ruth Wyman is saying, good morning, Nadine and Yehuda. Lovely to listen to you on first morning of lockdown, the second. My first opera was Let's Make an Opera, Britain at 5 years old. My all-time favourite opera is, of course, Rose and Cavalier. And thanks, Ruth. And I think, Denai, if anybody does have any questions for Yehuda, please, please, please just send them down the line. And he would be happy to answer them if he can. Joanna Harries is just saying, I missed out on watching these the first time round, but what a lovely way to start lockdown number 2. Joanna, thank you. Off to my first creative meeting of the day, feeling positive and inspired. Thanks both. Joanna, thank you for being here. That's wonderful.
I saw Joanna last night.
Oh, wonderful. You see, this is why I say that this series is definitely a community, and it doesn't matter whether you're in opera or not in opera. You know, this is a place where everybody can see that the 6 degrees of separation is very, very small. So what I would love to ask you then, let me just check if I'm just, your 3 tips.
My 3 tips?
Yeah, for kind of reinventing oneself at this time. What would they be?
I don't want to sound, again, formulaic, but I think we'll discuss around these. I think, first of all, I think you've sort of got to stay true to your essentials. I think if you're reinventing yourself, you can't reinvent yourself completely every time. So you have to sort of understand, and this is part of sort of communication strategy. Yeah. You have to understand the essentials that you have to offer someone. Again, we're talking a professional environment here.
Yeah.
So don't blag. I think I'm personally not a good blagger. Because I always think, are they going to believe me? So I think be confident in what you have to offer, because everyone has something different to offer. But define that to yourself, and remember that's the basis on which you can then build something a little more creative, shall we say? A second one is do your research, because again, this is something I've seen over the years. You know, research in the old days used to be going to a library, ordering a book up, or did you ever use microfiche?
Oh no, but I remember seeing it. You can still see it in libraries now.
Yeah, nightmare. Everything. I remember the first time I really had to do some research for a job. I remember I had to go to the Barbican Library for a day and go through microfiche trying to find out stuff about a company. And these days, you type the thing into Google, and in 5 seconds, you got your answers.
Yeah.
And I'm quite shocked by the degree to which people don't do that again. It's so easy just to get the top line information. To show you've done your homework. We all like it when people have done their homework to some degree. There's no excuse these days for going in and knowing nothing unless it's literally just been thrown at you that moment.
And that's also, coming from my corporate world, as we know that I was in banking, but coming from my corporate world, I always used to interview people, and if they had done their research, I knew that they were serious about what they were wanting to enter into, and I also knew that they were a professional.
And it's, you shouldn't. I mean, again, when you're interviewing someone, it's not good when someone just comes out with a long spiel that they've sort of learnt off by heart.
Yeah, no.
I think the important thing is to show you've made the effort to find a way in.
Yes,
that's very important.
I love that.
And lastly, it says, don't let anyone smell your fear. which is because I know that when I was younger, I would sort of go in and start questioning myself in the middle of an interview, sort of arguing with myself. And that's based on the fact that I wasn't 100% sure about what I was saying, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
But again, I think people, again, in this sort of binary environment we live in now, people quite like it if you're quite certain. Be prepared to be questioned on it, and be prepared to be able to support your argument. But I say, if you're doing this process of reinvention, you have to be pretty certain, otherwise you'll end up sort of sabotaging yourself, I think, because you'll think, oh God, I can't do it. Again, another expression I don't like is imposter syndrome. People throw that around a lot these days. There's some truth in it. You think, oh, is this really, am I the right person for this? And you think, well, actually, to hell with that. I'm as right as anybody else is. It's quite easy to top yourself up these days on what you don't know. I mean, it's, if I'm writing an opera review, I'll go and see an opera I have never seen before sometimes, whether it's an established opera or a new one. And I can do enough homework on it to get myself up to speed.
Yeah. I really identify with you say, don't let anyone smell your fear. I think sometimes when we've got a lot of, we're new to something, or we're pushing ourselves up to our next level, and, or we're being tested, we're taking a risk, it is very easy to run into a form of fear that can then debilitate us, which then can also make us fall into the imposter syndrome space.
And just to go back to going back to your essentials of what you are and how you want to communicate those, because I'm waving my finger, that's a very bad habit.
No, go ahead.
In all the companies I've worked in, I worked in quite a lot of companies before I went solo. Yeah. Communication was one of the things people were not good at. You get a senior boss who was a brilliant business person, but who wasn't a good communicator. And the world needs people who can communicate professionally.
Yes.
It sounds like something everybody should be able to do, but they can't. We can all, we go to the doctor for a bit of help. You can go to a communications person for a bit of help.
Yeah, exactly. And can I just clarify, when you say essentials, you mean the foundation of who you are as a person? Yeah.
Yes, and your skills and what you have to offer. And everybody has skills. And I think I was thinking about this. I realise it's a terribly tough time for artists at the moment. I mean, it's never been so tough. It's always tough for artists.
Yeah.
And performing artists do an extraordinary thing. I mean, they go out there and they expose themselves essentially to a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
Now, that's what business people do to some degree when they're going and selling.
Yes.
And I think those skills that performers have are valuable for other people as well. So there's that there might be there's sort of a career opportunity or an employment opportunity in that.
Yeah,
I think for performers, I'm not saying everybody's going to want coaching in how to go out there and sell yourself, but you as performers are doing that all the time, and you're doing it with something very complicated. So, I as you might expect, I get angry when people think performers are a bunch of fluffballs, because most people will say that sometimes. But the vast majority of performers I've met are actually very intelligent, purposeful people with very high levels of skill.
Yeah, and I think thank you for saying that, because I think that's where we've fallen short in this, whole COVID situation, of artists being seen and not valued for their worth that they bring to society. And I think when we look at how the arts have infiltrated society to do good, to boost emotions, to ward away mental health, things like that, we realise, I think people are beginning to understand that artists have a lot more to contribute than they originally thought. And let's hope that this time has highlighted the great professionalism also that artists bring to society.
And again, part of communications again these days is not being afraid of stating the obvious and making the obvious evident to the people you're talking to. And I think again, just to go back to opera, because it's what I know most, is that most people don't realise that you're out there filling a 2,000, 3,000 seat theatre with sound without the aid of a microphone.
Yeah,
people don't realise that, and that is in itself it's an astonishing achievement in itself, and it needs to be repeated. Because why do people think a sportsman is miraculous?
Yeah.
And why do people not think an opera singer is miraculous? I don't understand that, you see. I'm a little biased, I know.
No, but I mean, if anybody was to really look at, I mean, I'm going to be talking to the wonderful Gonu Gillis tomorrow. She's also an opera singer. If anybody really understood the kind of different stages that you have to do even just to learn one role, and then different stages just to even be able to have a great technique, and then the different stages to promote yourself, and then the different stages in creating relationships, and then being able to be really flexible and travel all over the world, and then to keep going on auditions and to be flexible. The list is endless.
But it's a business. That is how you run a business.
Yeah.
And the parallels need to be made apparent. If in a world where artists are really going to have to assert their viability, to coin a certain phrase, you mustn't be afraid of making that obvious. I'm not saying, again, it's got to be presented as a sort of solution, not a problem.
I
feel it terribly strongly. Every time I've interviewed a singer, I think apart from one case, literally, I've been impressed by how they understand things and how they make it happen. And so
it would be great, actually, Yehuda. I'm gonna pipe for you to do maybe something like a workshop with singers for something. I don't know what there, because I think what you're talking about right now is really important to what we need right now, and maybe someone like ISM or Equity or Musicians Union will kind of like make that happen, and maybe I can do a bit of writing because I think what you're saying there could be a whole workshop on it. And I thank you so much. So Gordon Gillis is saying, I love this. I worked at MDC Classic Music when I first came to London. Bernard Haitink came in one day.
Nice man.
Oh, wow.
Nice man.
And she said, I'd put on a CD by June Anderson. Oh, wonderful. Who's this? He asked. I told him, I've never heard of her, he said. I was really humbled by that such a great maestro would admit to not knowing everything and everyone. It's really stayed with me and was a great lesson for me personally. Wow, Gordon, in terms of communication, I absolutely agree with you. Knowing what we don't know is okay, but wanting to find that information and do that research, as Yehuda keeps saying, to actually learn what we don't know takes a lot of courage.
And also not being afraid to ask questions that other people might think are stupid.
Exactly.
I'll sit there in client meetings and I will say, I know this sounds a stupid question, but... And the client will say, I hadn't thought of that,
Yeah, exactly. And they come from instincts, don't they, Yehuda?
What do?
Those questions that we think are stupid, like we're sitting there and thinking something doesn't quite feel right, and I actually don't know the answer to this, but actually if I ask the question, then I would get a lot more useful information, or I could take them in a different direction.
But I also think it comes, something in my work, I tend to work with quite complicated stuff. So opera is quite complicated, or tech is quite complicated. I even work in pharmaceuticals sometimes, which is very complicated. But you have to be able to sort of say, it's the areas where people also like to show off their knowledge to people who don't know as much as they do. All of them. Bunch of opera buffs. It's like another language unless you can speak it. So if you don't understand something, it is quite scary to say, look, I actually don't know what you mean there. And then you usually pull people up. And if they're patronizing, that's their problem if they're going to be patronizing. Because I think patronizing is inexcusable most of the time.
Yes, it is, But then at least you walk away with the knowledge.
Yes, exactly. Even if it's unpleasant, you'll walk away knowing some more than you did before.
Yeah, exactly. So Gabrielle Tubbs is saying, I'm back with you, Nadine, as always, a rewarding conversation. Thank you so much, Gabby. And Marika Rausha, I'm gonna keep your name right, I tell you what. She's saying, so true, Yehuda. I'm nodding continuously over here. Another great.
She deals with corporates and things, doesn't she?
She does. She's a phenomenal artist, and I think she's phenomenal in the way that she's been able to create a niche for herself that really works. If she is one of the artists that I would highlight as someone who's actually ready for this time, it would be Marika. So well done you, Marika. And again, I think you've got a lot to kind of teach artists about how to do that and how to move that forward. So maybe we could all talk at some point. And then Anthea Parashchak is saying, yes. I realise that the older I get, the less I really know. How true, Anthea.
And the less you give a proverbial if someone doesn't like it. That's one of the great benefits of getting older, is you think, that's the way it is, and I'm not. When you're younger, you think, I've got to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, but doesn't that also come back to staying on message, Yehuda? Like, the more confident you get with your message, the more you don't have to try and please or to try and change your message to suit somebody else, because actually you know who you are. So then you attract the people that you really want to work with.
I think that, obviously there has to be a bit of leeway in that, but I think the essential is very true. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it is one of the things that, again, I've learned is some people are not going to like you and not going to like what you have to, or they just won't get you.
Yeah.
And you can't be all things to all people, and
No.
That's no point in thinking that.
Oh, on that note, I'm gonna close the session down, but you have done just such a phenomenal opener for us. I mean, what a conversation we've had this morning. Sorry, Claire Pendleton Holy is just saying, I'm not surprised that I'm agreeing with everything Yehuda is saying. I ask questions all the time. It's great to learn continuously. And you are a fabulous learner, Claire. I've watched you and you're always ready to do hands-on, how can I do this differently? And I love you for that. And you're always curious. And that's another thing that I love about you, Claire. Yehuda, you've led us in a really amazing conversation and communication in itself, I think is a really big subject at the moment in terms of everybody going online, in terms of how we reinvent ourselves, how we support ourselves financially, and how we fill in funding applications,
That is, filling in a funding application is something that terrifies me. I don't know how you guys do it.
So, and if you want to come to a point about staying on message, that would be one of them.
Yes.
But one of the most important things that I love about you is that you do, as I've said earlier, do have this authentic way of showing up. And I think you actually walk your talk. So in terms of your messaging and your communication with your clients, we know that when we're with you, you are actually emanating that anyway. And I think that's a really super powerful force that you have, and you stay in it. And I've never seen you kind of wobble or kind of be pushed in one way or the other. I really see you standing still all of the time. And I know that every time I see you, you make an effort to say hello. There are so many people that, I'm a journalist, I'm at this thing and, gosh, I can't be seen talking to you. I've got to walk over and do da-da-da-da-da. Or I'm in the middle of something, or I'm talking to Dame da-da-da-da-da. You never, ever, ever do that. And, oh my gosh, I'm getting emotional. But for me, I want to tell you that the fact that you've never walked past me and you've always said hello.
Goodness me.
It's one of the most touching things, because you've helped me to understand that I belong in opera. Reaction.
No one should ever walk past Nadine Benjamin. I don't know how anybody could.
No, but it's really important, and I think it's important to know that your authenticity really touches people, and is such a what's the word? My dyspraxia now. Find a word. Your contribution to opera is and if you want to find where Yehuda writes, you can find him in Opera Magazine, you can find him in The Stage, and you can find him at www.yehuda.co.uk, Yehuda, Wehuda, and he's all over Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So you can
Instagram.
Oh, he doesn't do Instagram. Sorry,
something to waste time on.
Where you get just managing the essentials. So we've just got a few people saying thank you. So I'm just going to go to them. Anthea is saying super conversation. Claire Pendleton is saying I love you both. We love you too, Claire. Catherine Woodward is saying thanks, Yehuda and Nadine. Thank you, Catherine. Gronya is saying thank you both. This was such a great conversation. Lots of food for thought. Ruth Wyman is saying thank you both for a very interesting discussion. Denai Eleni is saying thank you for championing opera and opera singers as business people. Would love to attend a workshop. # always learning. You see, there's a workshop there. Let's speak to ISM about you. I think something like that would be great. Ruth Wyman is saying, always, Yehuda always says hello to me. Exactly, Ruth. Anthea is sending you loads of hearts. Catherine Pendleton Holy is saying, Yehuda is such a gentleman with so much knowledge to share, such a fascinating writer. And Gronya Gillis is saying, so important to acknowledge people. As she's saying, Nadine, so important to acknowledge me. Thank you, Gronya. See? Look at the love, Yehuda. Woo! First day of Safe at Home.
That's a good way to start a foggy Thursday morning, isn't it?
Exactly. So I'm going to say from Yehuda and I, thank you all of you for joining us and for being with us today. If there's anything that you would like to ask Yehuda but you didn't, please put it in the chat and I will find a way of getting that answer to you or putting it in the chat to answer your question. Remember that I'm going to be here every day, Monday to Friday at 9 a.m. with some guest who is going to come and connect with our community. Tomorrow I have the wonderful mezzo Gronya Gillis, who's also a political activist and a theatre maker. She is a wonderful dynamic personality, and so I'm so looking forward to having her here tomorrow. And I'm so looking forward to the journey that we're going to have over the next 4 weeks, because even though this next set of lockdown may be harder for some and easier for others, we are still a team, we're still here together, and we're still in connection. And so anything is possible. Every day that we live, every day that we breathe, we are possible. So take care. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. And thank you so much, Yehuda, for such a great discussion. You are fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.